Nobody woke up dead this morning.
We'll call that a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
Well, good morning, Liberal Kansas, Southwest Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and all other places where you tune in to get your news and views from the middle of America. This is Earl with the Leader in Times. On the far side, Jim Rice, just off camera, B. Simons, and we're coming on a little earlier than normal for you today because we have some special guests here. We have the Kansas Senate President and the Kansas Speaker of the House. We have Ty Masterson and Dan Hawkins here with us. They're on their Prosperity Tour, and we're going to talk about that. I put in a phone call. I couldn't get it done, but I do have a proxy. We do have Donald Trump is also here with us today. So he's watching you. He's watching you guys, so make sure, you know, he might want to chime in at some point.
He's already agreeing with everything you said.
There you go. So you guys coming around Kansas, we appreciate you coming to Southwest Kansas and sharing with us here today. And I got a couple of questions before we get into the Prosperity Tour, but I want you to introduce kind of what you guys are doing going around the state to talk about maybe how we can prosper better in the state of Kansas.
I always defer to my colleague and partner, Ty Masterson, the Senate President, because he does such a good job of introducing us. So I'm going to defer to Ty.
Well, I mean, we kind of started calling ourselves the kind of frickin' frack show. You know? We'll be here all week. So the message we're really putting out on this Prosperity Tour deals with taxes, but we like to open up with this. We have a kind of a unique relationship that's not historically been the case in Kansas. Matter of fact, I've been here probably way too long. Was elected in 2005, but I've never seen it, and a lot of staff that are there have never seen it. There's always natural tensions between the chambers, the House and the Senate, and some of it's all in good fun, right? You know, upper chamber, lower chamber, big head. Well, I mean, we kind of make fun of each other. But what you'll find has happened in the past is those all in good fun become somewhat serious, and you got tensions between the leaders, tensions between them, the chairman, and tensions between the committees, and so you start posturing against each other as you work through the process, and I just don't think that's healthy. And I knew Dan had the kind of character that I wanted to engage with, and he's just been a breath of fresh air for me in the sense of we come over this, and it's the first time this last session, which was Dan's first session as the speaker. It's the first time in Kansas history the 100 years we can't go back. I didn't go back. That we adjourned sine die, which is the end of session in April, and it's because we just worked together. We weren't. First time we haven't postured against each other. We had an agenda, kind of called it the better way, and we put the tenets of the agenda together. And it's really the Republican platform to a large degree, and we got our work done. And so Dan's just been great to work with. It's I can trust him, and so we didn't posture. It was like we got what we could get done, and then we got our business done. We got out, and we hope to do that even more. So that's the little intro. It's really refreshing to be able to work together.
Great intro, huh?
That is, you can't beat
Boy,
that.
after a speech like that, I can see why he deferred to you.
And so I'd be remiss if I don't cover a couple of local things real quick first, and then get into the Prosperity Tour. But first, the biggest question in the state right now, Kansas State.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming up. That's
Tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. I think I'm going to be there.
Are you?
Yeah.
Great.
So we lean purple in my household. So my wife in particular, she does not have a lot of appreciation for KU, but I represent Kansas, so we're hoping for a good game. It's actually interesting. It's the first time I think KU really has a shot in quite a while. I think that K-State's got a real game on their hands.
Yeah, but they're underdogs.
Yeah.
Surprises me.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, Kansas, 9.5-point underdog at home.
Yeah.
And
And ranked higher.
well, not now. They were last week. Now it's 25-22. K-State's 22.
I hadn't seen the latest.
KU's 25. But at least how about in the state of Kansas having our two teams in the top 25?
Pretty good.
Got to feel good about that. In Southwest Kansas, the last governor's race, of course, Southwest Kansas is a good, solid area for conservatives and Republicans, but the margins weren't quite where they've been in the past. And I saw Governor Kelly saying the way she won was by not losing in the West by as much. And she says her playbook is to spend money on education in Western Kansas and on highways, and they won't win, but they can reduce the margin enough to have victories because of what they do in some of the more metro areas. So when you guys are facing these elections statewide, because that's what it takes, you got to have maybe a friendly face in the governor's office. What are you guys learning from some of these elections on now Republicans have dropped 2 in a row at the governor's mansion? What do you guys see as how to get the message out of what Republicans can do and why they need the governor's office to get it done?
That for Ty and I was probably one of our, in the last year anyway, that was probably one of our hugest disappointments, besides losing our tax bill to the governor. But losing the governorship was really a tough thing for us. We had lots of plans. We'd spent a lot of time with Derek. We really thought that he was going to win. There's a lot of reasons why he didn't. He did underperform out here in the Big First, which was a surprise to everybody. But he really underperformed across the state. There wasn't really any place where he performed as well as what he probably should have. Was that his team that he had? We don't know for sure, but we do know the governor had more money than us, a lot more, probably 3 to 1, and that's the one thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make sure that our candidates are well funded whenever we go into these things again. I think we're going to have to make sure we work harder across the state and make sure that the Big First and the Second and the Fourth. He even underperformed. He lost Wichita, which I couldn't believe that he lost Wichita. He shouldn't have lost Wichita. So it is what it is for us. So we just have to go and try to do the best we can and make sure that we continue to have solid representation in the House and the Senate, that we can get the stuff done over the governor's veto. The governor vetoed 37 bills this year, and we overrode 11 of them. The House overrode 13, but it really doesn't make any difference how many. It's how many net, and we netted out 11. And quite frankly, our largest, for Ty and I anyway, and I think for most of our members, our largest disappointment was certainly losing our tax package, which was a phenomenal tax package, and I know we'll talk more about that.
I think when it comes to this governor's race, they really did have a brilliant marketing strategy. I bet we can all still see her walking down the middle of the road, right? I mean, they played those ads so many times, and it was effective. I mean, and even Trump, I was able to communicate with one of her internal people on kind of a debrief on the election, and they were finding in their exit polls Trump-Kelly voters. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, how does that gel? Those are opposite people, because she's quite frankly not in the middle of the road. I mean, I've served with her for quite a while. She was actually the ranking Democrat on a committee I chaired for several years, so we had an internal working relationship, and I can vouch for the fact she's not the middle, particularly on social issues. I mean, she is radical on those. I mean, abortion until you breathe air, and change your gender on your birth certificate, and just kind of off the edge of all that stuff. But they were effective in making her seem the middle of the road in their exit polling. I'm just looking at Trump here bobbling at me. They were finding voters because they didn't see her as a politician the same way they were expressing about Trump, and so she was able to get some bump out of that. Derek was seen as a bit of a politician, as a long-running AG, and that it affected the races.
She was just a grandma.
Yeah.
And she also said on a commercial, look, boys shouldn't compete with girls in sports, and then vetoed the bill that would have prevented that. And you guys, that was one of the 11 overrides that you guys had to do to take care of that. You talked about Derek Schmidt. One of the things Derek Schmidt was proposing was 4-lane access from out here to Wichita, Pittsburgh to Wichita, and that's something we desperately need in Southwest Kansas, is to get connected to the rest of the state with 4 lanes. And you guys have authority. We will never have enough votes in either chamber, but if you guys could see the state as one big picture, Southwest Kansas doesn't have a 4-lane. Northwest does, Southeast does,
That's right.
Obviously Northeast does. But what can we do to just get that balance on the map where we have 4-lane access? We lose a lot of economic opportunity because they say, okay, do you have this? Do you have that 4-lane? No? Okay, we're down the road. So what can we do to get 4-lane access in Southwest Kansas to connect us to Wichita?
Yeah, that's all part of budgeting, Department of Transportation. And, we have to have a secretary that's engaged with it, and it has to be a priority for the department. And for it to be a priority for the department, it has to be a priority for the administration.
Right.
And it's not with this administration. It would have been with Derek Schmidt, but we can't sit here and woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? You can't fight from where you wish you were. You have to fight from where you are, and this is where we are. Truth is, if we would have had Derek Schmidt or any Republican, quite frankly, you would have had lower taxes, you'd have had parental choice in education, you'd have had the list is fairly lengthy of what you would have had. We would have had it done in January.
Yeah, elections have consequences. That's and we always say that, and it's true. In this case, all of the things that we could have done, we can't do unless we can come up with 84 and 27. We have to have 2/3 in the House and the Senate, and if we can do that, then we can do it. But that's a difficult proposition. Out of 35, we got 11. I suggest this year we'll probably see the same thing. She'll probably veto much of the same things that she vetoed this last session, and hopefully, with it being an election year, election years sometimes change things. So hopefully, with it being an election year, maybe we'll get some of those that we wouldn't normally get. We'll see.
The problem is you have those that are not running again.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, they're not going to be accountable to their voters anymore. So
That is true.
They'll make some decisions that aren't necessarily the best.
Well, and even within your own caucus, Pyle pulled votes off for the governorship. We've got a guy out here, a little north of here, that I don't know if you can count on him all the time. And so, you've got to have, you had a chance to override that veto, and then you have a guy switch on you from on the floor to the veto session. So, how are you supposed to, be able to overcome this when in your own caucus you gotta have people you can count on?
And that's kind of the hard part of politics, or for me, the disappointing part, when you have somebody, and that was happening in our chamber. We missed a supermajority by one vote in one chamber, and from a gentleman who had voted for it 3 times in a row, and then just for other reasons than the logic of it all, irrational decision making, he decided to go the other way for politics, and it cost us all.
And you can't predict that. It's something you just can't predict. We think we know what's going to happen, and then that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it took him. He was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But there were 2 others, Pyle being one of them, and then your gentleman just north of us. Those were the 3 that took us down.
Yeah, and that it's hard. We talk about things like terms like rhino and things like that, but you had a chance. You could have done that tax package. We could have done the I refer to it as flat tax, but you know what I mean by what you guys' plan was.
Single rate.
Yeah, a single rate plan, and so you couldn't, because within your own party, even though you had the supermajority, it wasn't that you just had a majority, you had one short of just a supermajority to override a veto. So let's talk a little bit about the $3 billion in Topeka that's just sitting around. Some of us would like to see a little of that. Sent it in, took it away from us, if you want to say it that way. Didn't need it because it's just sitting there. So, how is it that everyone out here, I hear it every day, businesses struggling to keep going, cutting back or just not being able to do the things they'd like to do, and yet Kansas government sitting on $3 billion that they don't need.
I say at most of our stops, the thing I say is, governments don't make money, they take money, right? And so they should only take what is necessary to operate for the good, and we are way past that at the state level. $3.5 billion, we've never seen anything like this, now, we all know to a large degree some of that's false and it's long-term projections because you have all that stimulus money that's flowed through, but it is time. We showed the tax plan that we had put forward was long-term sustainable. They'll out there say, oh, it's Brownback 2.0, which is a whole other can of worms to open that wasn't true, but but the point was it's not. If you wanted to, the food sales tax piece that went through, which was the main tenet of the governor's piece, that had a larger fiscal note than Brownback. If you want to be Brownback 2.0 in the negative term, she was. Right, so our plan was actually long-term sustainable, and it was going to change the structure of Kansas moving forward.
Really, that's the reason why we're out here. Ty and I have been going all over the state talking about our situation with our taxes and various things. The governor has really the bully pulpit, and she gets to talk anywhere she can go. People listen. People She'll say anything she wants to say, whether it's true or not. And so we're taking this opportunity to come out and to kind of set the record straight. That tax plan that the Senate and the House worked on virtually all session. Those tax committees worked really hard to make sure that we came up with a plan that was sustainable, responsible, one that the people could count on for years to come. And when she called it the Brownback 2.0, it's so far from the truth. It's pathetic. It doesn't even look the same. It's totally different in nature. But yet, she would come out with a proposal, and the only proposal she came out with, she talks about that she had several proposals. The only one that Ty and I heard about was an $820 million giveaway of a rebate, a one-time rebate. And yet, she called our $300 million tax single-rate tax plan irresponsible. That's just crazy.
And she calls that reform.
Yeah.
Says she's for tax reform. I'm going to cut you a check and call that reform.
So that tax plan was really, from our standpoint, probably the best tax plan, and she should have signed it. We were truly surprised that she did not sign it. It took our tax plan from a current 3.1, 5.2, 5.7, so three different tax positions in there, to one tax, 5.15. It exempted the for those people. 10,000 up to 10,000 exempted all of that. Right now, those people are paying $310 a year in taxes. So it exempted 100% of their tax. Going above that, it did away with the 5.25 and then brought the top rate down to 5.15. So literally everybody along the continuum got a tax break or are paying no taxes, one or the other. So that's a good thing. Ty yesterday, he made a comment, and I love what he said, he said, we're dealing with a wavy line. And when you put one tax rate going up, you're going to have people that are going to come close to hitting that line. So not everybody gets a huge tax break, but everybody does get a tax break. And that was important for us to do that.
And I just want to clarify, when you say zero, you're talking about zero at the bottom.
At the bottom.
I mean, it was for people who,
Yes.
that are trying to work their way up or working jobs that don't create a lot of wealth as it is. They were the ones that were going
Right.
to be.
Yeah, there were two positions in that bill that were 100% tax cuts. It was Social Security, which got missed by a lot of people. It was a 100% removal of income tax on Social Security. We're one of the few states that do that. And it was a 100% tax cut on the first 10,000 of taxable income, which allowed for everybody to get a tax cut moving forward. And that's what, they want to go out and say, well, this guy was at 3.1 and now he's going to be at 5.15. Well, no, his first 10,000 is at zero. So just do the math. It's a benefit forever.
Well, and the 5.15 is you're maxed out at 30,000, so you're rich. Once you hit 30,000 income, you're at 5.15, so you're
That is
rich.
the current system.
Yeah.
You become wealthy at 30,000 and you're paying top rate 5.7.
Yeah.
And so people just don't understand. They think rich people are thinking somebody has more than me, right? At wherever you're at. But it's $30,000.
Pretty much all of us.
And to show you the difference in the ideology, when we brought the single rate plan for structure in my chamber, the Democrats brought a new 5-tier that topped out at 9% state income tax as their position on taxes. Not that this is, it just shows you the difference. We're trying to simplify and lower. They're trying to make it more complicated, more progressive, and higher.
Well, the question that's being asked, it's always the wrong question in my view, is paying your fair share. The question is, what's the government's fair share? No one's asking that. What we're supposed to be funding is what you guys are providing that the public wants done at the state level. How much does that cost? That's the question we should be asking, not someone's fair share. You always think, like you guys mentioned, someone else can pay more than me. They're obviously doing better than I am. They can pay more. So they like to change the dynamic of the issue by saying someone's fair share. And the other thing is, does everyone have a little skin in the game? You'll pay more attention if you're invested in it. And so, I just think the question's the wrong question.
So I love some of the stuff that Ty comes up with, and I'm stealing it from him. Got to steal shamelessly in this business. So. Yeah. And he doesn't mind. He said in past programs, and when he said it, I loved it, sales tax. Everybody pays sales tax.
Yep.
Same way.
same rate. Property tax, anybody that owns property pays it at the same rate. Now, depends on what your appraisal is, but the rate's the same. So all of a sudden on income tax, it's not supposed to be like that. Don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense.
You're right, you play the dollar game, not the percent, because the truth is the largest tax cut was the 100% tax on the first 10,000 and the 100% on Social Security. They're gonna try to point to the dollar, well, the guy that made more money got a bigger tax cut. But that's the same thing, is if we're splitting the bill and I paid half the bill and then they give us 10% off, I got most of the benefit because I paid most of the bill.
Right.
So it's, and they play this class warfare game that's just, it's smoke and mirrors. It is not reality. The truth is we need this flat fare system.
But when you say, the sales tax rate is the same across the board, but the people who have more, who buy more, pay more.
That's correct.
So, and the people who have less, buy less, pay less. So it works itself out simply by activity. And, that is what really keeps an economy going, is activity. You freeze up, everyone puts their money in the savings and doesn't spend it, everybody's in trouble. But if you keep that money flowing, that's how we keep it going. When you talk about this plan, the Democrats just, if you saw it, I'm sure you did, they just unveiled their plan where they talk about they want to return to the ad valorem system, where you send money back to the state cities and the state counties and that kind of thing, and lower property taxes on homeowners, not necessarily businesses or things like that. So how does your plan compare to what they're throwing out there now?
So that,
Go
Dan does a great
go
job,
ahead.
but LAVTR, it's Local Ad Valorem Tax Reduction Fund is what that stands for. But that was about as effective on property tax as the Inflation Reduction Act was at the federal level. It's just a clever name, and it didn't prove to do that. In the years that they tried to fund that system, taxes went up, and Dan has the info on that. All it was really doing was trying to transfer a tax from the general fund of the state to the local level, and it was intended to lower property tax. But what's happening is it was just increasing the spending level at the locals. And so Dan's got some really good things on that.
Yeah, about 7%. So the last 5 years that the ad valorem, the LAVTRF was funded, taxes went up on average 7.6%. Right now, in our last 5 years, right now, it's about 3.5%, 4%, something like that. So ad valorem, the LAVTRF did not work. They just used it as a slush fund and spent it however they wanted to spend it. Now I say that in general terms. There are some counties that actually do right. There are some counties that actually did lower their mill levies at that time. Just most of them didn't.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't.
Well, and Jim Rice here was a retired commissioner. Shannon was a commissioner. A lot of you guys that make it there probably served, some of you guys in the House and Senate were commissioners or something like that before. But if you guys were to send Seward County, and I'm not knocking the guys that we have right now, I think everyone is just looking, you send them this new money from the state of Kansas, they're going to find a new project. Matter of fact, they've got projects they're waiting on. They're saying, well, we just can't get to this because we don't have the funds. We can't get to this. Oh, now we have the funds. I can just tell you, and I'll stake my reputation on it, 99.9% will not cut a dime, but they'll say, well, we were able to do this because, look at the ARPA money. ARPA money everywhere. Did we cut taxes with the ARPA money, Jim?
No, but I was in on the first part of that, and I assure you that there were people that requested and bought things that had it been out of their own checking account, or they had to pay for it themselves, they would have never purchased any of it. But and that was right here locally. I could point out several that made requests and they were granted, but they had they had to pay for it out of their own treasury, that would have never happened.
And we have an all-Republican county commission, and I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking the city commission. I'm saying you send them extra money from the state. My taxes will not go down a penny.
No.
I chaired Ways and Means in the Senate for one full term. That's the kind of the budgeting committee. And I got to tell you, it was coming in as a fiscal conservative. It is hard. So I don't even think this conversation is condemning of any individual that's sitting there on the board. There's always things to spend money on. That's the hard part of budgeting, right? Is trying to figure out living within your means and trying to, because you can always find something to spend money on. And it was amazing to me, but with the state level, of course, we got, you know, Medicaid, and you've got, and K-12 education, which was just consumed, you know, 60% of our budget. So when you were trying to cut, you know, this is back during the Great Recession, it was all we could do to just slow the growth of government to 1%. The whole time I was the chair, we didn't grow more than 1%, but it was still a 1% growth because you're trying to cut everything else out. And so it's just human nature. You give someone free money, they're gonna find somebody to spend it on. They're not gonna give it back.
Well, and when you talk about education, I ask this question, how much does an A cost? I mean, if it's just about money, then, and we've increased it over and over and over again, but why aren't the grades going up? If money equals better outcomes, then where are they?
Oh, Dan was in the room. We went and met with one of the lead attorneys for the Schools for Fair Funding, which is the group, you know, suing the state for more money for education. And we got into our conversation at one point. I asked him, I said, well, what about the outcomes? And he said to me, he goes, I'm not concerned about the outcomes. You just have to, he goes, it's about the resources. That's why we spend the resources, is to get the outcome, right?
Well,
it's about educating these kids. But he was all about just the money.
And he even agreed that the outcomes haven't
Yes.
done what they
Yeah,
thought.
right. You look at our scores, and so there's your big experiment, right? When people talk about the Kansas experiment, everybody kind of thinks of tax plans, which, by the way, there's a whole thing we can open up there, because that wasn't even Brownback's plan. He got blamed for it. But we now, because of Montoy's lawsuit, the Gannon one, the Gannon two, spend nearly $3 billion more annually on K-12, and our test scores are worse.
And that's what's frustrating to the people of Kansas, and even right here. I mean, we've got a district that's struggling a little bit. Of course, we have some unique challenges. We have a high migrant population, and so you have a lot of ESL students. You have a lot of non-native English speakers at all, and you got to work through all of that. And I'm not saying a lot. You guys might think a lot in Topeka means 10. We're talking like 85% of the student body that cannot read or write in English. And so we have some unique challenges. That's not an excuse, it's the truth. I mean, that's just the way that it is. But when you see these grades, and now we're not even what you call fully accredited here. We're in this danger area, so they got to work on some things. But when you look at those kind of things, and yet we've poured money into it. I mean, the feds and the state is a majority of the money spent in liberal, and I'm sure at other places. And the outcomes just aren't there. And then you see people going back and asking for more and asking for more. And my question is, then what do you get for your investment? I mean, we're expecting kids to be educated in the state of Kansas, and I'm not seeing it.
The tragedy is we have some amazing teachers in the classroom, but when you got such a shift in the system like that, you have to be a lot more. It's the only time I use the term progressive. We have to have game-changing paradigm shifts in how we educate, because the system, it's kind of like pouring water into a bucket with holes in it. You can pour as much in, but it's just going to run out the other side. And it's not, I mean, it amazes me we have this situation, and it's hard to figure out, because we look at the top value, right? We spend $6 billion on K-12. It goes into the system. They decide then how it divides up according to the formula. And you're having situations where a teacher's coming off some of their own money to buy things for their classroom. That's actually happening, but there's no way it should happen, because the volumes of money that are going in, that should never be the case. There is a disconnect between what's hitting the buildings and how it's being used, because there should be no situation where the amount of money we spend on K-12, there should not be a single teacher that spends a single dime on their classroom.
Didn't the governor veto that bill?
No, we didn't. Yeah.
Because we passed a bill.
Well, it was a tax credit on that.
Yeah,
There's just so
yeah.
much more to. There's
Yeah.
so much more to do. There are models of education that pay teachers better and educate better, but our system protects itself, and that's the difficult thing. We need to have a very difficult conversation, and particularly out here in the West, where you've got kind of it's not a Kansas thing. There's kind of a general depopulation of the Great Plains. The dynamics are changing. There has to be a full paradigm shift in education, because the focus needs to be the kids and not the system.
I would love to have you guys come back out here, you're welcome to come back, because we'd love to just talk education because of the challenges in the state, the damage done by the governor's shutdown of all the schools. There's a lot of other issues, you know, to talk about. How do we get back to where we were pre-COVID, much less build back, you know, beyond that. So there's a lot of things going on there. You mentioned the brownback comparison. I can guarantee you in 2 years, whoever Republican runs for governor is going to be brownback 3.0. So
How long can that go?
that's I don't know.
Definitely in there.
I guess.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm just asking you this kind of question. You know, how are you? You know, how would you frame up the next governorship race? Obviously, Kelly's going to be term limited, but you know, I can already project it. I can write their ads for them right now if they want, because I can already tell you what they're going to say. But how do you combat that? And with what you're going around doing right now with the Prosperity Tour, you know, how do you convince people that cutting taxes doesn't ruin the economy? Now, if you look back to what Brownback did, the one thing that was probably harmful in that was when you cut property taxes like that to out-of-state interest, that didn't benefit Kansas. You know, Kansas isn't like it was when Bush and Reagan did cuts, because any American who got their cut and spent it anywhere was good for America. But in Kansas, if they didn't spend it in Kansas, it wasn't good for Kansas. So how do you combat, you know, what you know is coming down the road?
You know, we're already watching what Kelly's doing, and Kelly is really just setting up Lieutenant Governor Tolan for his run. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out, but she has given away money after money after money. She has been Mrs. Santa Claus for 3 years now, just handing out money right and left, and it's always tied to Tolan in some way, to Lieutenant Governor Tolan. And so you got to know that he's going to be their next nominee. For us, we have to get out and get our word out, just like we're doing here. I think Ty and I have really looked at this as an opportunity to start something that nobody's ever done, as far as I know. Yeah. I don't think you've ever seen a Senate president and a speaker take I think this is probably our 10th stop on the tour across the state. So we're going to have to continue this. We're going to have to find ways to get in front of people, whether it's calling in on your show or some other shows, whatever it takes, because it's not always easy to get around to all the different locations with our time frame. But we have to get the word out. And the word, if you hear our side of this story, you're going to get a different take than when you listen to what the governor's got to say. The governor literally takes credit for everything that we do that she likes, and then she just trashes us on everything that she doesn't like.
The key is guys like you. Dan's absolutely right. They talk about things like, well, she's brought economic development to the state of Kansas. Well,
how'd she do that?
You're welcome.
Yeah. How did she do that?
she you know, my favorite is she goes, well, she signed this bipartisan bill. I was like, you can't sign anything else. We're Republican legislators.
If it passed, it's bipartisan.
Is a Republican bill. So the things that people like, it's like, you're welcome, and the things you don't generally come straight out of the administration.
You know the ones I love is when she tells her people not to, or her Democrats, not to vote for a particular bill. We pass it, it goes to her desk, and she signs it. Now that is funnier than heck that she would do that. Yes, and it takes credit for it.
You guys would be key, right?
Yeah.
It's because the general flow of information to what is, you know, the low information voting public, right? Because and that's not, I'm not criticizing anybody. I mean, most people, you're living your life, right? You're making a living, you're raising your kids, you don't have a lot of time to take in a lot of that information. And the main flow of information is bent against us. I think we talked about that earlier, these different groups that are popping up to get a particular agenda out. And so guys that actually put this message out are rare. And so you can't blame the people. I can point to one example. I even had to back it up and watch it again. At one of our local affiliates, you know, nobody thinks of as, you know, bias in anything. It was 2 days before the election, the Kelly Schmidt election, and the story was basically 2 days before the election, Kelly's doing this, Schmidt's doing that. But just the read-in on it was Governor Laura Kelly, who's recently been, you know, credited with bringing the largest economic development thing to Kansas, is doing this, and Eric Schmidt, who's been recently tied to cutting schools in Rockback, is doing that. I'm thinking, what? I mean, you're telling people good is doing this and bad is doing that, is what you're trying to tell people. And both of them were factually false, but it's the narrative.
Absolutely. And I can tell you locally, the Republican Party in Seward County is working to make sure that those percentages get back to where they need to be. They've been meeting and discussing the differences in those numbers. You know, when you look at what House Schmidt won out here, he needed to win by 10, 15% more. Mm-hmm. And that's got to be the case across western Kansas. And so I'm hoping other counties are also paying attention to those numbers and meeting with their groups, because it's got to be a grassroots level thing to make those changes. And so we're going to keep our eye on that. I tell you what, you mentioned, you know, calling in. We have the technology. Anytime you guys want to call in, we can get you on and share your views, and maybe you can tell us as this thing moves on. I know in about 20 minutes you guys are going live out here at the Liberal Convention Center, and that's over at the Fairfield Inn, right? And so if you want to see these guys live, you can head over there at 8 o'clock this morning. They're going to have breakfast, and they're going to talk about the Prosperity Tour and how to get Kansas back on track, and maybe get this $3 billion. So you know, just I guess end this thing with, what are we going to do with it? What do you guys plan? I mean, are you giving it back to people? You're going to cut taxes? You're going to buy ivory back scratchers for everybody? I mean, what's going on with the $3 billion?
So we're going to cut taxes. You will see, and we've been saying this for months now, but really quickly when we get back, probably in the first 2 weeks, we want to have our tax package back together, and we can do that this time. We work on a 2-year biennium, so all of the stuff that we've done before is still out there and is alive. So we can bring it back in, put together a new conference committee, bring all of the pieces together to do another good tax package, and I think that we'll do that really quickly. We also really want to get the LAVTRF repealed, reduce the mill levy, the 20 mills on schools, reduce that by 2. You know, one of your own here in Seward County is working on that for me, so he might be sitting in front of us here.
Well, I had to clarify, because they're going to try to say that we cut the 20 mills to 18, they're going to try to say that's a cut to schools. 100% false. It's all part of a formula. Anything we cut off the property tax is by statute backfills out of the general fund. So there's, even with that, it would be a direct, that's the only way we can directly affect property tax, because the state, really, that's all we have 20 mills that go directly to K-12 and 1.5 mills for buildings and maintenance, and that's all we have, so they will directly affect property tax relief.
It's important for people to know that, because literally schools, the school administrators are putting that out. They're basically saying they're going to get shorted. It's absolutely not the case.
Tell the folks out there where this $3 billion additional money came from.
Well, to a large degree, it came through the stimulus, right? I mean, you had all these different, you know, whether it was a paycheck protection or all these different plans that came, it's the feds, when they printed those trillions of dollars, right? I mean, it all flows through. It wasn't just the direct appropriations through stimulus. There were stimulus programs inside the corporations, and it flows through the taxes, and that's why we have such an inordinate amount. Now, we do have to be careful, because it's the pig and the python, right? That thing's going to digest, and we got to get back to normal at some point. So that's why the budgeting's so important. Get back what you can, spend one-time money on one-time expenses, pay down debt, do what you would do in your household, and then manage that out.
Well, and we appreciate you guys coming in and sharing, coming out to Southwest Kansas and getting this message out. And we'll be getting some coverage in the paper also, and getting this out to the public. And you're welcome back anytime. You know, Shannon's got our number. He can get it to you guys. If there's something coming up you want to call in even and get it out there, we'll be glad to keep the messaging out there so that people are getting the facts and the truth, and not spin on you know, what this money is. You know, when you're hearing it from lobbyists and special interests, I tell you, just take it with a grain of salt. You know, think about, why are you hearing from the elected officials one thing, but from the hired hands it's something else? You know, and just think about the sources of the information that you're getting, because it's important. And any last word, anything I didn't ask you feel like is important?
We covered a lot.
Yeah, thank you,
We
Brad.
did, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's an honor to be out here.
We would certainly like to do this more. So you saying we're welcome.
Well, we're here every day.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I can actually see how this could be beneficial to your area in the fact that, every Friday, we are generally not doing quite as much in Topeka, and we could literally call in and let you know what's going on. So
We'd love to have it, and you're welcome anytime. Shannon gets you our number, and we did Senator Marshall before. We had him on he was driving from one place to the next, and we had him, so we'll be glad to do it and keep people informed out here. And we wish you guys the best of luck as a new session starts here in about 60 days or so. And
not far.
and you got a lot of work to do, so we look forward to it. We'll let you get to your next meeting, and we got some more news and views we're going to bring to you, and we're going to do that. Fall off the bone ribs, dripping with our signature barbecue sauce. Tender pulled pork and brisket smoked to perfection. All served with family recipe home-style sides. It's all waiting for you at the Brick House Barbecue and Brew. Open 7 days a week, your barbecue appetite can be satisfied anytime for lunch or dinner. Brick House serves full dinners, combos, sandwiches, and take-home packs. Enjoy a variety of brews on tap or a mixed drink. Shaken, not stirred. Give your taste buds a treat at Brick House Barbecue and Brew, 24 East 2nd Street in Liberal. Like us on Facebook and see our full menu at brickhouselk.com. Well, did you learn anything? What did you think about having the Speaker and the Senate here on the show?
I think we ought to feel privileged for those guys taking the time to come and talk to us. And if we can set up something on Friday afternoons after they've wound down the week in Topeka, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and the challenge is balancing information from the false that's out there, from the spin, and versus the guys who are elected, who are put there by the people, and they're saying, here's what we want to do, and then everyone else that has a vested interest. And you talk about it at the federal level a lot, but think about it at the state level. How many people are getting a skim off of that?
Yeah, well, and I think, just like here, I mean, how many times do you see the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House get together and sit down and actually communicate on what's going on, their thoughts and their feelings about what's coming up, or for one thing or another. So, I think that was really neat to have those two guys here this morning, and hopefully we can get them back either in person or online. And I think that the more you are informed about what's going on in Topeka, and those are for sure the guys that know, because they're the head of both the House and the Senate. I don't think it could get any better than that. I can't think anybody in Topeka that could do a better job than the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House telling us what's really going on in Topeka.
So they're headed over to the convention center over at the Fairfield Inn, and they'll have a crowd over there that hopefully they'll continue to discuss what's happening. What all this extra money, and how do we protect the taxpayers of Kansas as opposed to just like and you were a commissioner, so again I asked a question. If you guys were just given a bunch of money from another agency, would they just say that will instantly cut everybody's property taxes?
Well, the thing that concerns me is for how long and how much. And when they were talking about that, they were talking about cutting taxes, which I think is important. But there's many other things too that they could do. I mean, you look at these states that have got no state income tax. And of course this is a one pile of money thing that is here because of the stimulus package and the COVID relief funds and whatever all it is. There's, I don't know, $3 billion or more laying there, and but somehow if we can figure out how to extend that for a period of years rather than making it just a one-time deal. Let's not have any state income tax or whatever it might be, like they're talking about reducing property tax, which I think is important. But if it's a one-time deal, I don't know, that's going to be forgotten shortly, because they reduce your taxes one time and then the next year it's back up to where it was, or higher. And so I don't know how they go about that. But anyway, there's some interesting conversations that need to take place, and how they spend that, was my idea. I did a little figuring this morning. If they just put that, I don't know that they could, but if they just put that in a savings account, and I just figured about $2.5 billion, that would generate about $135, $137 million annually at about 5%. Now that might not sound like much money, but when you get thinking about comparing that to the cost of your semicircle out here, or the rest of that highway, that's about I don't know, what was the total amount of that to do that? 14 million?
It was 12 million for the roundabout, and it was 18 million if you did the new intersection.
So you're talking $30 million. That still leaves you $100 million to spend elsewhere. If you could just put that in a savings account and keep it, and you could utilize that. You could make that really flexible if you just put that in a savings account and kept it and operated just off of the interest. Think of the projects that you could do with 137. Well, it's $3 billion, so that's another. I think it's about 55 billion per. I figured 5.5%, so it's about 55 million per $1 billion. But if you did that, wow, that could do a lot of people a lot of good across the state for years and years to come.
That ought to be our goal, is how much money do we need to all put in one time to create basically the government trust fund, and then say you can only function the rest of time on the interest that's made by that. So once you're out of that, you can never spend the
No, you're done.
you can never spend the principal.
You fold up and you shut the government down.
Yeah. So B, we'll give you a chance to get in here. You just heard from the speaker and the Senate president. What's your reaction to what you heard?
Well, it's nice to hear from the people that are affecting our daily lives and are living in the state of Kansas. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing to help people understand what's going on in Topeka. We see so much on the national level. It's nice to see what's going on the state level, and to hear from the people that are in charge of that and affecting it. It's good for us. I think and people need to pay attention. You said there'll be a crowd over at the convention center. I hope there will be a crowd. I hope people are interested enough to come out and listen and hear what they got to say, because everything that's going on up there affects each and every one of us. Whether you're starting out, whether you're retired, it doesn't matter. It affects each one of us. So I hope there's a great crowd, and I hope they come and pay attention and listen to what they got to say, and then I hope they continue to do this. This is great that they get out and get involved, with the communities.
Well, it sounded like, from before we turned the cameras on, and talking to them earlier, that they were really enjoying their time out here. They said they enjoyed being out here among more conservative folks and conservative media and that kind of stuff. And, so they were really having a good time out here. So hopefully they'll have a good showing down to the convention center here in a little bit. You still got time to get down there if you jump in the car and head down there this morning and get to know those guys. And Shannon was here earlier this morning with them, and some other folks. They had some their staff members along with them. So we had a pretty good crowd sitting out here in the audience there for a little bit. So well, and we want to give them their chance to share what their plan is, how they see the Kansas moving forward. Changing the tax structure to,
you know, it's a one tax plan as opposed to the, you know, the graduated tax plan that almost discourages you. You say, gosh, if I move up a level, I'm going to be paying more taxes, you know, that I'd be better to stay down here.
Well, you know, and I mean, I know when I was over at the county, there was sometimes you'd offer somebody a salary increase. Well, no, I don't want to do that because that's going to throw me in a different tax bracket, and I'm actually going to take home less money than what I would if I stay at the same salary I'm at. And so, you know, but a single tax, I think probably a flat tax is probably better. But then, you know, another benefit that perhaps you hadn't thought about is that we can help those guys accomplish their goals. If we know what they're doing and what they're trying to do and we agree with it, we can certainly, you know, contact our legislators or, you know, whoever you need to contact in Topeka to help push that forward, whatever it might be, whether it's on taxes or anything else. So, but we need to, you know, if we're aware, it's a whole lot easier if you're aware and knowledgeable about the project and what they're trying to accomplish. So, but anyway, yeah, that was a fun morning. I enjoyed that really.
And so we'll look forward to that as they move along and share plans. We'll keep you up to date right here on the show to let you know, when bills come up, what, you know, who's voting which way and that kind of a thing. And we'll keep you in the loop. But when you look at, you know, some of the investments being made here, and like I say, we need KDOT. You know, $100 million being spent here, but that's not, you know, that's not a credit to a Republican or Democratic governor. You know, that's just an administrative move. And like I say, it's about time because we've been sitting on the back burner for 70 years on some of these highway projects. And I know, you know, are we supposed to kiss the ring for that? I mean, what are we supposed to do? You know, I mean, that ought to be like, here, we owed this to you. We owe this to Southwest Kansas. You guys have been paying it. You're getting back what's owed to you because, you know, we've helped other parts of the state. We're glad to do it. You know, when the oil and gas was rocking and rolling in the 60s, 70s, 80s, how much severance tax money went to Topeka?
Oh, bunches.
And very little of it trickled back to Southwest Kansas. And we were okay with that because we're like, it's what's best for the state of Kansas. Well, now what's best for the state of Kansas is to give some of that money now that we've helped develop up the infrastructure so they can have a sound economy on the east side. Now put some of that money back and develop up the infrastructure so that the west side can have the economic, can be an economic engine for the state as well. Why is that such a hard concept?
Well, you know, I guess it's that American mentality. It's all about me. It's not about anybody else. It's all about me and my wants. And, you know, the heck with you. And hopefully, you know, that begins to change. You know, I think that's still a great thing in Washington, D.C. from the policies and the rules and regulations. It's all about me there, but you know, here I think we can change that if we get involved. And I think KDOT's a great example of that. The community got involved. The communities got involved. Dodge City, Ford County, you know, Garden City, Finney County, Seward County, Liberal, you know, we all got involved and said, here, KDOT, this is what we need to, you know, better our community. And, you know, we had public meetings started, I don't know, probably 5 years ago or more. I don't remember when the first one I went to, but I remember when I was still on the commission, we went to Garden City and KDOT was there, and they, you know, basically kind of opened the door and said, okay, tell us about your needs and how you see the highway system and what it needs to be improved and one thing there. And that's kind of when that started. And there was a lot of people at that first meeting, as I remember, when we went to, I think it was the school system and that new school out there on the east side of Garden held that in the auditorium, and there was a lot of people in there, and we all had time to get up and make a little presentation about the needs that we've seen along 83 highway, basically. You know, a little bit about 54, but mainly, you know, passing lanes on the turning lanes and all of those kind of things needed, you know, north of Liberal between here and Sublette or whatever, and you know, other things. But that's when the public involvement began, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that now, just, you know, as a result of what's going on right out east of town here.
Well, I got copies of letters that are being sent to the Transportation Secretary from out west here, and I think there's like 50. Well, before would be 2 or 3 letters. Hey, we'd like you to look at 54. Now there are 50.
Yeah.
And I was surprised by some of the communities on there. You're talking about Hugoton. Now, Hugoton doesn't even touch 54. But they understand the benefits of 54 and what that means for western Kansas. There were other communities along that aren't even on 54, but they signed off to let the state know we support 54 because that is going to be the best connection we're going to ever have to get 4 lanes in this area. They get it. 50-some letters going to the Transportation Secretary to understand this isn't just some, you know, voice in the wilderness. This is an entire region asking for this improvement, and that's why hopefully, you know, with the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, you know, if we can make a good relationship with them to let them understand, fellas, just get us a road. We will crank tax money to Topeka if we can get this road, because that's holding back where we could have had expanded businesses, growing populations, a higher quality of life. Just another option in Kansas to bring people into the state and let them have a great Kansas experience at life. But we can't do it until we get that road. That road, it's 70 years we've been working to get this road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Gary Warden told me that he remembered when he was about 7, 8 years old, which would have been 80 years ago.
Well, first I'm just
That was
reminded
the
he can
promise.
remember when he was 7 or 8 years old.
Anyway, that was the promise. There was going to be 4-lane highway, and he said, we haven't got it yet. You know, good work takes time, I guess.
Well, Dwight Eisenhower developed the federal highway system. That happened under his administration. And 54 was marked as a high priority corridor
Yeah.
in that plan. And here we are, you know, it's just like, and when I heard the secretary say, well, if we did that out here, other parts of the state are going to want to know why we're not doing that. Because you already did things in their parts.
Sure.
There's already a turnpike. When was that built? There was already I-70. When was that built? And we sat back and waited. We said, oh, okay. Did we fuss and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't put I-70, that's not for us? No, we said, we get it. We understand. We need to connect Kansas City and Denver and shoot across. We understand. We support that. And a turnpike. Connect I-35 from Kansas City to Oklahoma City and beyond. And we said, you know what? We understand. We're true Kansans. We support that. That's going to be good for Kansas. We did that. And we sat back and said, we'll wait our turn. Well, now we've waited.
Yeah.
And waited.
We're the main corridor
And
from the southwest.
And now it's time for the rest of the state to say, you know what, Southwest Kansas has patiently waited.
Yep.
They've watched other development in other parts of the state. Now it's time for us to to finish the plan. You know, they always say, don't be phase 2 or 3 on a project because only phase 1 ever gets done. Well, we've been phase 2, 3, 4, 5. And we've sat back.
And somehow we always continue to be 5.
Gosh, how many times have they replaced Kellogg in Wichita? You know, I would love to have Kellogg 20 years ago, whatever that road is, put that out here, you know, and we would have been done by now. You know, but not holding any other place back, but we're being held back. And I just want to see, you know, those commitments. So we appreciate that we had this opportunity today to share our concerns with the top 2 leaders in the Kansas legislature.
Even if it was a little bit early. You
Yeah.
know? Of course, I don't know. I think, in talking to them, I think everybody got up about 3:30.
Yeah.
It sounded to me like, of course, and
I
they came
didn't.
from,
Well,
I
I
think
wasn't
they
there.
came from Garden City. So, you know, they
Right.
had an hour's drive, so they, you know, they had to get up pretty early to get down here.
And we appreciate that,
You bet.
that they did that for
bet.
us. You know, they didn't have to do this. They could set up in Topeka and just say, you know,
Yep.
we'll just push what we can get and go. But no, they drove all the way out here to talk with us and
Well,
to talk
I
with
think,
the
you know,
whole region.
I think we can help them. I just think we can help them if, you know, they'll let us know what their needs are, you know, in the House and the Senate. I think we can, you know, maybe sway a few folks and get enough votes to, you know, to do what they want to accomplish. And, you know, without us, you know, every vote does count and every letter does count. And if you can get 50 letters opposed to 2 or 3, that will make a difference.
It does. And so we'll be watching that. I do want to let people know tonight in Light Park, you remember when the weather killed out the night out? Well, tonight is the alternative night.
All right.
So if you want to go over there and check out all of the things that they're going to have at the night out, it's going to be tonight over at Light Park. So you might put your jacket on, but you know, get on out there and see what they got going.
Should
and
be a good night.
support that. Tomorrow is this is going to be a tough weekend for me because you got KU State tomorrow, or it could be just the greatest weekend ever. Depends on how this goes. And then you got Kansas City, Philadelphia on Monday night. So you know, what a weekend of football. And
He's going to be hibernating next to his TV set, I can tell.
and on Tuesday, another programming alert. We're going to have the state runner-up unified bowling team here on the show. And that evening, 5:30 to 7 on Tuesday, you can go over to the depot and congratulate them for that accomplishment. You know, second in state. They brought home the trophy for that. You know, second year of the program. That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
I might have to use a microphone because there's going to be a lot of them here Tuesday. We're going to have to see how we set this up. Might be all standing up here. But we're going to get them in and tell them how proud we are of them as a community for their accomplishment and Coach Potter and Coach Arnold for working with them and just a good outcome for that. So watch that on this coming Tuesday. And gosh, you know, next week will be a short week because Thanksgiving. So
Yep, that's right.
Monday, Tuesday,
Better
Wednesday.
get that
and
turkey ready.
get the turkey going. There's a
Or find out somebody that's going to have turkey.
I found and coming out Thursday. I won't get to see it on Thursday, but I'm going to go watch it on Friday. Is the Napoleon movie is coming out, and with Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon. But I want to go see that. Napoleon is a great historic figure. I mean, a very controversial one, but I want to see how they portray that. And you know, we're living on land that used to be owned by France. This was New France at one time. And Jefferson bought it from, guess who? Napoleon. And Kansas, what we call Kansas today, you're talking about from New Orleans to Canada, this whole area was part of the Louisiana Purchase.
Wonder if that was a good buy.
It was a great buy. Let me tell you, it was hard. It was probably one of the hardest things Thomas Jefferson ever did. Not because the money. I mean, I think it was $6 million or maybe it was $3 million, but it was a steal. But
They wouldn't even pay the tax on it now.
I wouldn't pay the tax on one parcel in some places. But Jefferson was a true constitutionalist. I mean, maybe the last one, but truly committed to the Constitution. And he's like, guys, it doesn't say anywhere where we can buy land. And if the Constitution didn't say they could do it, he was a guy that just said, if it doesn't say it, we can't do it. That's why under Jefferson we didn't have a national day of Thanksgiving. States did, but he said, where does it give us the authority to do that? It doesn't say we can do that. That's reserved to the states. He actually believed what the document said. So it was a real struggle for him to even purchase this land because he's like, I don't I don't see where I get the authority. He said, but we cannot pass this up. And he went ahead and authorized the purchase and bought it, doubled the size of the United States of America overnight with that purchase. And so here we are. So I want to see that show the other side of that. You know, Napoleon needed money to fight a war, so he was like, we're never going to do anything with that land over in that place.
Some things never change. They're always needing money to fight a war.
In Europe. And so I'm going to go do that. What do you got going for Thanksgiving?
I don't have any idea. I don't know. Kids is all staying where they're at, and so I don't know what we're doing. We're just going to hang out, I guess.
I don't know if Brahms is open on Thanksgiving.
Probably. I don't
Probably
know.
not.
We'll see. If not, we'll figure out something.
I do know the college is not open.
Yeah.
Our pastor at South Church of God, she's got a big heart, and she's having a dinner that's going to allow the kids who can't go home to come over to church. Is going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, and so the college kids are coming over for that. So, and when my daughter was a student out here and on the softball team, there was a couple who couldn't get home. We had them at our house and for Easter one year, and I made some pork belly burn-ins. If you've ever had that, you'll never be the same after. It will change you as a person. And these girls, these physically fit athletes, college athletes, are eating pork belly like it's candy, and they're like, if you do this anymore, let us know. We'll be back. So take care of that. B, you got Thanksgiving plans?
Yeah, we're going to go spend it on the left coast. Come up, get a chance to go see my kids, and since we're going to be close here half the week, so we're going to take advantage of that and go see them and see what life is like back in Oregon. Just for a very short time.
Now, you're going to be in the half of Oregon that stay in Oregon, or the half that wants to be Idaho?
Well, we'll go through the half that wants to leave, but we're going to be staying in the half that's still there or staying, so we'll get to see both of them.
All right. Well, and we've got family coming over, so looking forward to it. We're it's less than a week away now, so I'm going to get the smoker out and
Get it ready.
and start getting things going on there. Here we are. It's already November 17th. We're a week from Thanksgiving. Gosh, it feels like we were just celebrating the beginning of 2023.
Yeah, it don't take long for a month to go by anymore. My goodness.
And someone was asking me, so how long have you been doing this show? And I think it was Coach yesterday. And I was thinking about it. We're going on 2 years. We're getting what, March? Is March?
Who would ever thought we had that much wind?
And it just we keep going. As long as there's something to talk about, we're going to be here to share it. And there's always something to talk about in Liberal, Kansas.
Yep.
So we're going to keep that going. But we do hope everyone has good plans for the holidays coming up. Taking a look at what's happening, nationally. Yesterday, what did you think about this? The appellate court lifted the gag order on Trump on that civil suit. First of all, they said gag orders are pretty much for criminal cases, number one. And number two, they're to protect the jury from being manipulated. And there's no jury in this case. So they lifted the gag order, and it took Trump about 2 seconds to post on Truth Social what he thought about the judge and this whole process. So
I think that's how come the judge initiated the gag order before, because he was burning him a little bit.
So what do you think about the appellate court saying no? The gag order is. This is the fourth time the appellate court has already overruled decisions of this judge against Trump on this. So if that doesn't tell you that there's a bias in New York against Trump, and that the appellate courts at least are at least holding some line of fairness.
Yeah. Well, I think free speech came into the decision. The right to speak his mind and speak his peace and his beliefs and what have you. But on the other hand, look at the amount of money that is being spent on this kind of stuff that hasn't really harmed anybody in any way. As a matter of fact, they profited from it, you know, and just look at the amount of money, because you hold a grudge, I guess, you know, and your campaign motto was, we're going to get Trump. I mean, what kind of people do that, including what kind of people would vote for somebody like that?
Yeah.
You're supposed to uphold the law, you know, and you're innocent until you're found guilty, or you used to be, but now then, you know, I don't know, it's just crazy, but the amount of money that's been spent on that, if we would use that money to, you know, help wounded warriors, or, you know, some of those kind of guys are military veterans, all of that kind of stuff. Think of how much good that would have done. Yet we're sitting there, and I mean, they are, and they're spending literally millions of dollars doing something that is about as frivolous, and everybody, I guess, can see through it except the folks that are involved in it. And I don't know, what a shame.
So, B, what's your thoughts on, you know, this gag order that would say, you know, Trump, you can't speak, you can't, and he's running for president, and yet still, you know, no, you don't have the same rights as everybody else. We don't want to hear it. We didn't even really want to hear him in court to defend himself, but they said, well, I guess we have to, so let's let him have. But the decision's already made. You know, this might as well be a Russian court.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. But what do you think about at least an appellate court saying you can't silence a guy just because you don't like what he's going to say? That's what freedom of speech is all about.
Yeah, I mean, that's what our freedom in this country is having freedom of speech, and to deny that to a guy that is being charged so ridiculously to begin with, it is crazy that we've allowed this to happen, and we have judges like this in our country that's just willy-nilly, because I don't like you guys, I want to put a gag order. Well, I'm glad the appellate court has said, hey, it ain't right, we'll make it right, and give the man a chance to speak his mind, which is what he should do, because that's his right, it's our right.
Well, at one point, you had said that you didn't think that Biden would be the nominee. I disagreed with that, but right now I'm not so sure anymore, because, you know, I mean, as bad as the numbers are for him, and you're hearing them talk about even The Rock. They're trying to recruit The Rock. You're talking about Gavin Newsom, you know, Gretchen Whitmer, you know, and they're not even running. But, I mean, now there just seems to be this, gosh, we got to come up with something. This guy, I mean, the thing I think people are just most upset about on their side, they love the policies. They don't care about that. They're just like looking at him and saying, the dude's just flat out old. I mean, he's just old. There's one thing about being Grandpa Joe. There's another thing about being great-great-grandpa Joe that should be in the home by now. But what do you think now? Do you still stick that he won't be the nominee?
I don't really think he will be, but I mean, you know, if you watch the deterioration of his speaking abilities and his ability to navigate and find his way off of the stage, and the statements that he makes, and I mean, he's the laughingstock of the world. To be a world leader, he is the laughingstock of the entire world. I mean, when you go talking about neighbors in your town waking up dead one morning, you know, or a few other details like that, I don't know how in the world, you know, he can continue to, they can continue to put him out there and do this. He's an embarrassment and a disgrace. You know, I mean, if somebody is using him as a judge to judge how strong the United States is, I'd say we're about as weak as we've ever been in history, because he does not have the ability to stand up and speak on his own. he has to read from a teleprompter, and he's even getting worse at that. So, you know, how long they can continue to, the belief, and even the people that's getting ready to vote, how they can believe that he can complete another 4 years after this. That's 5 years from now. I just don't think he'll ever make it that far, because he's got some serious decline in the last 6-8 months anyway.
Yesterday he was giving a speech and he was reading it off a teleprompter, and that's not unusual. Presidents do that, and I get it. But he was getting to some words and he said, I can't even pronounce that, I'm not even going to try. Yeah. And the crowd kind of gave a little laugh, and he said, it's better not to even try than to get it wrong. You know, and I'm thinking, that's your entire presidency. You just don't even try. You know, and that's my fear sometimes locally. Would rather just not try because we just might get it wrong. You know, it's like, try anyway. You know, make the effort.
They'll stumble through it if nothing else.
Yeah, let's try. My gosh, not to try because might make a mistake.
Because you might fail.
You know, you might. You know what? You might just succeed too. You know, it's Babe Ruth had a saying, never let the fear of striking out get in your way. You know, he was for a long, long time, decades, he was the home run leader. You know what he was also the leader? The strikeout leader. He struck out more times than anybody else. Does anyone remember that? Or do they remember the successes? You know, and but he tried. You know, he tried. And I guarantee you, every pitcher that would see Babe Ruth coming to the plate was like,
crap.
and yeah, do they say, hey, this guy strikes out a lot? Or did they say, this guy hits a lot of home runs? You know, and so, you know, gosh, this whole thing of a president who just, I mean, this is the not try, and again, I still say, and it'll never come out, but with all of those people dropping out when nobody was going to the convention as the leader, that is the fishiest thing I have ever seen happen. Now, right now, what you're seeing in the Republican primary, people are starting to drop out. So what I want to start watching to see is how does that affect these numbers? You know, do those numbers then coalesce under Trump? Or are they picking another alternative to Trump? I mean, if you get down, if Trump's like 46%, 20%'s the next guy, but what happens if there's only one other guy and you're 46%? Well, that's not enough. I mean, Trump's got to be over 50% in the Republican deal. Now, when you look at the national polls, Trump's still beating Biden. I mean, people are saying, well, you know, if it is him, I'm still going to go with I'm still going to go with Trump. You know, I was better off under Trump. People get that. But I'm just curious, as more and more people drop out, what's going to happen? What do you think?
I don't know. You know, you hear a lot of talk about, well, I don't like either one of them. You know, but when it comes down to the day to vote, are you just not going to check the box, or what are you going to do? You know, and I think you just have to go by the policies. You know, comparable policies are, well, they're not comparable. They're exactly the opposite, you know, of what Biden has done, and they will continue those through the next administration if Democrats are, you know, are elected. If there's a Democrat president elected, you know, so I think you're going to have to decide if you like open borders and, you know, high gas prices and high grocery prices and, you know, everything going to pot. I think that's going to be your choice. Do you want to maintain the, you know, the current rail that we're on, or do you want to do something about it and change your energy policies of, you know, total reliance on foreign producers, you know, all of that kind of stuff? Do you want to, it just depends on how you want to try to make well, help the United States survive, because the way I see it, well, the current policies, the United States is not going to survive. There just isn't any way. And, you know, we've been invaded, and who knows who's here. you know, and I don't know, we've got some really serious problems, but, you know, there's a lot of talk, but not much action in Washington, so I don't know. I guess we'll see, but, you know, we still got about a year until the day we vote, and there certainly could be a lot of things happen between now and then.
So B, when you look at, some people are dropping out, Tim Scott dropped out and others have dropped out, Mike Pence has dropped out, so you're getting fewer and fewer choices in there. How do you think that affects? You think Trump stays on the top of this thing? You think it becomes more of a two-person deal? Or, Nikki Haley has been coming on strong. You still got Ron DeSantis in there. I kind of see eventually it'll be those three. And I think as long as it stays those three, Trump still wins because the other two will be splitting it. I think the only way Trump goes down, in my view, is it's got to get down to just a one-on-one. But how do you see it?
Well, I think Trump's still going to stay the leader in everything, and probably come down to that. The thing that I worry about coming up in the next November is if you get down to, say, Trump, and if they stay with Biden, is if something would happen towards before elections, that the economy picks up or things begin to look good. People have short memories in this country, so if things are going good, if he's turning it around, they're going to vote for Biden. But if they think back 4 years ago of how we had it under Trump, the economy was running good, people had jobs, we were going well, other than the COVID thing, you'll see Trump back in there. But yeah, I think right now with the races, with the three that probably would, like you say, will stand out, I still think Trump has the advantage, unless something crazy goes with all these court cases that he's got going. Unless something crazy happens, I think he'd come out on top at the end.
And that's the only thing. That's the only thing is if, the only thing that disqualifies you is, for being convicted of a high crime or misdemeanor, a felony, and not at the state level. I think it has to be a federal level deal. But these ones in Florida are federal level. I don't see anything really there. But the thing is, in January 6th stuff in D.C., that's the only thing, and they've already convicted other people in D.C. I mean, that's just a bad environment for, the New York stuff doesn't matter at all. But the two cases that you have to watch are the federal cases, and that's the document case in Florida and the January 6th case in D.C. I think either one of those or both, if they did get bad rulings, could be appealed up, because you're not going to get a fair trial. I don't care what conservative you are. You're not getting a fair trial in Washington, D.C.
No.
Not if you're a Republican, you're not.
Exactly.
Or a conservative.
And so, whatever, that's the one that I say. But if they do that, I don't know what because we've never been in this position before as a country. If they do that, what grounds do you have to continue to run for the office? We've already seen these 14th Amendment attempts being defeated in courts. Minnesota, Michigan, they're still trying it in Colorado.
Yep.
And some other places. But so far the courts have said, no, you can't keep someone off the ballot on this insurrection thing. First of all, it was made for those in the Civil War who were actively engaged in fighting against the United States of America. There was no one fighting against the United States of America. Now, the thing that I'm hearing is Meadows might have flipped big time on the president, that he's saying, what they're leaking out now is that Meadows is saying that the president said, I know we lost, but we're not giving up power anyway. And what if that's coming out, if that starts to come out, how damaging is that going to be if some in his inner circle starts saying that he was admitting that he didn't win the election, but that they didn't care, that they were going to do whatever they needed to do to stay in the White House. Obviously it didn't happen. He left the White House. He headed out. When January 20th rolled around, we swore in a new president. So.
Well, I've seen something similar to that with Jenna Ellis. They was talking about, she was one of his attorneys, and she basically flipped and said, well, but that was to save her own skin. and so I think that could be the same way with Meadows. I don't know what they threatened him with or anything else, but that could be the same with him. But I don't think that that's going to move Trump's base 1 percentage point. They are stuck with him, and they're going to continue to be stuck with him. And the rest of them are just going to have to figure out which way they're going to go. So, I don't know all of this stuff. Who knows? It's kind of like Ty and the speaker were talking this morning. What you hear there and the real truth are sometimes a lot different. So anyway, I don't think Trump's base is going to fluctuate one way or the other, no matter how many of his people abandon him or speak against him. It's kind of like I was reading this morning here something that I didn't know was happening, but it says there's more going on with the Georgia ballot case than attorney resignations than you might be being told. Apparently, this battle over the 2020 elections, there's 155,000, I think, ballots that are in question. And they're still battling this in the courts. And anyway, a couple of the top attorneys representing the state resigned a couple of days ago. The question is why, and there seems to be a possibility that the ballots have been destroyed that were in question, and maybe those attorneys knew that, and they decided they didn't want to be involved in a case where the evidence was destroyed during a trial. So anyway, I don't know how you're ever going to figure out what the ballots were, but they were claiming the possibility of 155,000 ballots, maybe counterfeit. But if they destroyed the evidence, what? How do you figure that out?
And who asked for that to happen? And who carried that out? I think that those are questions people.
We don't know that they've been destroyed, but that seems to be one of the reasons given that those two attorneys representing the state decided to resign. So there's something probably going on.
Well, when you look at a local election, who's chain custody control of those ballots? So if I wanted to go back to the ballots from 2 elections ago, could I do that?
Sure. Well, I don't know, because there's a certain period of time. I don't know that you go back 2 elections, but I know you could go back to the current election, and I don't know what the statute says, but there is a statute that the election officer has to maintain those for a certain period of time. I don't remember whether it's 2 years or what it is, but anyway, and that's pretty much, I think, standard procedure through about every state, that you cannot destroy the ballots for 24 months or something like that. But apparently these guys decided to destroy them, and then I think that statute also says unless it's involved in a court case, then you have to maintain the ballots until the court has a chance to decide. Well, apparently in this, even though it's been 3 years, a little over 3 years, these ballots have been in question, and the time limit run out. Means they were involved in a court proceeding that you cannot destroy the evidence. And so apparently, but somebody did. Or, well, maybe, I don't know for sure, but anyway, so I don't know. We'll just continue to check that out and see what happened. I wasn't, like the headline says, maybe you didn't know this, but I didn't know that until this morning. I was looking through, I think that was in Gateway Pundit, I'm not sure. It was reporting that a couple of the attorneys had resigned here, and I think that Rogan, I believe is his name, goes by DC Drano.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was reporting that this morning.
Well, I was, a few years back, I went to the Dominican with our church. They're building a church over there, and they had just come off an election, and there were some questions about that, and all the ballots were kept in a storage container that mysteriously caught on fire. And so there was no way to know how that election, other than the numbers. But
Guess you could say that was a hot election, huh?
But I tell you, if people are destroying ballots, especially knowing that this thing was under contention, that this thing was being questioned, I want to know who would have given the order or who took it upon themselves and what does statute say is required. This is the whole thing about holding people accountable. Some people say, oh, you're stiffening the laws on these volunteers. Like, let's say B, you guys are in a very delicate position out there. And you're overseeing an election, and if anyone, it's one thing for someone to try to cheat. It's another thing if the election people are doing the cheating because they've got the machines. They're right there with the ballots. I mean, that to me rises to a whole other level of criminality. But if they said if you guys are caught cheating, it's not a year in prison, it's 10 years in prison minimum. Would that intimidate you from being a volunteer, or would you say you can make it 100 years because we're not cheating?
Yeah, make whatever you want to. I'm doing what they're asking me to do and do it fairly and do it right. That's what your job is. I couldn't imagine cheating on that. That's me. I'm probably too honest sometimes to do what I do, but I just can't imagine, cheating. I mean, it's just wrong, and especially when it's that level. So yeah, I'd make whatever rule you want to. What I'm going to do is going to be the right way to do it, and you're not going to change me no matter what.
And so that's what some of the detractors are saying is, oh, you guys are tightening this law because you're trying to intimidate. No, it's like we just want to make sure elections are legitimate.
Exactly.
In Connecticut, in a city Democratic primary in Connecticut, the vice chair of the Democratic Party is being accused of stuffing the ballot box in a Democratic primary. And when she is asked under oath, was that you? She claims the Fifth Amendment. She claims it takes the Fifth. I mean, it's just like what I see when talking about Hamas. These two things are comparable. If Hamas will sneak across the border and kill women and children, rape people next to dead bodies, and do all these horrific things, and then people say, oh, but surely they're not housed up in a hospital. Are you kidding me? They just killed a bunch of people. They paratrooped into a concert and killed a bunch of people and took a bunch of people hostage. By the way, that alone, they've got a bunch of people hostage, but somehow they've got these high standards to not go into a hospital. Are you kidding me? So you question an election, and they're like, oh, how dare you question an election? While the vice chair of the Democratic Party is accused of stuffing the ballot box in a Democratic primary. Yeah, if they'll do it even in their own primaries. They will do it because they want the outcome they want, and they feel justified in doing whatever it takes to get that.
Exactly.
And just what Hamas will do. Whatever it takes for them to get rid of the Jewish people, whatever that takes. And when we start seeing that in our own politics over here, and in this case, the judge even said, I can't determine because of all this cheating who won this primary.
Yeah.
I mean, think of that. So,
Yeah. Well, in this, to me, I mean, the question is whether these were counterfeit ballots, and I think they were mail-in ballots is the way I understood it. They said, well, if it was a mail-in ballot, it should have a fold. Well, there are a lot of these ballots in question. They don't know whether they were folded or whether they weren't, or whether they were just, brought
Flat.
in and run through a scanner. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're honest and fair and you want to end this in a hurry, just bring out those 155,000 ballots and let some people look at them and see how many are folded and, how many are not. And I think it's pretty evident if they're mail-in, they would have been folded to fit in the envelope. So, you discard those and then you look at the ones that have the fold, and you go from there. But you know, throughout, and it's not only in Georgia, it's a lot of places. You know, well, we're not letting you see the ballots. Well, why not? If you're honest and it's a fair election, you should be more than willing and proud to show that you are right. The ballots are as you stated. But nope, we can't do that. We got to fight through the courts until even the lawyers start running for cover. That's apparently what they did have done in Georgia. So I don't know.
Well, and I want to believe in every election. I want to believe that they're all fair. I want to believe that the people are doing the right thing. But there are some people, and this is part of the media's problem in this country, they're convincing people so bad that the other side is so evil and so wrong. You know, I just saw a report yesterday in another college. I think it was Michigan Tech or something, but professor, you know, basically telling all the kids that the conservative Republicans on campus did this. It was the celebration of the Berlin Wall coming down. So they put this Berlin Wall up, you know, as a reminder of, you know, what the separation was like. And this professor just ripped them and called them idiots and all this stuff. And so these people are just wasting our time. And, you know, and in class berating the students that just politically differed than him. And this is where we're at. And so if you feel that strongly, do you think that professor cares if the election was fair or not, just as long as his people win and the other side loses? You know, that's what forces compromise, is when you lose some elections, you say, we got to revisit this issue. I think right now Republicans are going through the abortion issue, saying, you know, we may want 0, but if we keep just pushing 0, we're going to keep losing elections because you know, so we're going to have to revisit about, you know, yes, we want 0, but we don't want to legalize it or push this legal thing that we're going to have to compromise a little, and there's going to have to be some. There's going to have to be exceptions. There's going to have to be times when we realize we're not going to get to 0. Will Republicans be willing to do that? I hate to have to think that way, but you want to win elections or not?
Yeah.
Or do you say, no, let's just stuff the ballot box and force our way through? And somebody will say, yeah, it's justified because we're protecting children. You know, you can't get to the point where you're cheating elections because you feel like you're on a higher moral ground. But that's where we're at.
Yeah.
There's a simple way to make elections right. Print a serial number on every ballot. We print $1.5 billion bills, just dollar bills, a year. And how many? What's the voting population? 200,000 or 200 million? If we can do $1.5 billion bills with serial numbers, we can do 200 million ballots with a serial number on it, and that way you know it. You know, make it simple. I mean, how much more simpler can it get? If you got a number on there, you know exactly how many were printed, and you know how many you got back. It's simple math.
Well, you could put your Social Security number on there as far as that goes. Everything goes by Social Security anymore.
True.
You know, you could do that, and then that way, you know, you can chase that right back to who voted.
That's the problem. I mean, when you're having an anonymous election, you cannot have a way to say, I want to know how Jim Rice voted.
Yeah.
So you can't do the Social Security, but you can do a serial number. And if you saw duplicate serial numbers, somebody cheated. You know, it's pretty simple. Or you say, wait, we issued ballot number 1001 through 2001. Here's a 3001. We didn't do 3001. You know, I mean, that's a good validative way to at least find out. But here's one other way that they cheat. B, you're going on vacation. If you lived in Oregon and you're on vacation and it's election time, or you died, and I walk across the street when I see the postman come and I get your ballot, it's still got a good serial number. I fill that puppy out and I send it in. The problem is these loosey-goosey getting ballots out everywhere. You know, that not by request. Where you see cheating take place is where you see, you know, this everyone gets a ballot deal. And I think that's a bad deal.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in Kansas. You have to request a ballot, and then they send you out a form that you have to fill out, sign it, you have to have a photo ID copy, and then it goes back, and then they'll mail out your ballot, and it has to be signed, and there's a system in Kansas to do that. A lot of people said, I got a mail-out ballot by Kansas. No, you got a request for a mail-out ballot from Kansas. That's the difference. Kansas doesn't just willy-nilly mail a ballot out to anybody. You have to request it and sign off that you're the one requesting it. And then when they get that and verify, yes, Mrs. Johnson at 1616 Mockingbird Lane is asking for her ballot. She signed it. It's her. Here's her ID. We're going to mail that ballot out to her, and she's going to have to sign sign the form that yes, this is me and that, and we're going to double check that versus what we have on record, and then we'll count that ballot. And some people say, man, that sounds hard. Yeah, hard means trustworthy.
We're getting it right.
Yeah. Easy means cheat. Pretty simple.
There you go.
And so I like the Kansas system. You've been, helping with that, and I know that you probably get an earful from Stacia on our system. But how do you feel about the way that we conduct? Do you see any holes out there as a volunteer? Do you see any way people can cheat the system?
It's nice to see how we do it, because it's like you mail out a ballot to someone, and maybe they come in to vote. Well, it's already in the system that was mailed out to you. So if it wasn't returned, you can't vote again. So there's checks and balances through the whole system of making sure. If you have somebody bring in your ballot that was mailed to you, it has to have your signature on it, and the person who brings it in has to sign for it. So there's a check and balance there to know that, hey, that was brought in by such and such. We know who it was because we looked at their ID to verify that. So Kansas has a great system, at least what I see in Seward County, of making sure that the votes are right and they're accurate and they're precise. So I love Kansas. When I lived in Oregon, you had no idea, because everybody got a mail-in ballot. Well, there was one sent out to everybody. Doesn't mean you got it, but so
somebody did.
Kansas, yeah, somebody did. So yeah, Kansas is great. I love what we got here so far.
And so if Jim said, I want a mail-in ballot this year, and he sends in the letter, and then they send him out a ballot. He fills that in. And he sends it in, but then he forgets. Did I mail that off? I'm not sure. So he runs out there and he says, "Hey, I'm out here to vote." What happens?
He'll have to do a provisional ballot, because they show that it was sent in. It's going to come up on the system that you've received a mail-in ballot. If we don't have it back, you do a provision, and that'll be double checked after the vote.
I had somebody the other day tell me that they went out to vote and they'd forgot that they'd already voted. And when they pulled it up on the screen, said, "Well, you already voted." And they said, "Oh, that's right, I forgot about that."
Yeah.
So it's
So the system works.
It does.
yeah.
And that's the thing is I have faith and credit in the Kansas system. I don't think it matters whether it's a machine or that. Now, you had that story the other day about a machine that was faulty, there were supposed to be 1,100 some ballots, and they ended up with like 10,000, and the
Yeah.
machine just started adding in ballots, But that's why also you talk to Stacia, she'll tell you, they also have to verify and validate these machines, that this is how many people came through, this is how many were cast on that machine, and that's how many we got. And the machine prints you out your tally, which is your verification of what you voted. And then you guys collect those up. They keep all of those. If they ever had to go back and recount by hand, they could do that, right?
Right.
So they don't have to just go off of that machine number, but what they'll do is they'll pick a couple random machines. They'll go back to the paper ones and they'll say, does this machine check out 100%? Does this machine check out 100%? They have to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think they certify those machines before they ever start.
Correct.
And that's some of the question in Arizona, if I remember right, that they certified all the machines and the tabulators and everything before the election, and then somebody tampered with them in between the time of election day and the time that they certified the machines. And that's how they got all fouled up down there, and a lot of the tabulators wouldn't tabulate, and, you know, because somebody was in there monkeying around and did some things that, you know, stopped a lot of voters from getting the opportunity to vote, because when they went, the machines didn't work. And so they either had to go somewhere else or go home. And so, you know, the question is well, did it allow everybody that voted, you know, an opportunity to vote? I mean, wanted to vote, an opportunity to vote. And so, you know, but there's all kinds of problems everywhere out there.
Well, the other thing with the machine you got to make sure of, I think one time we had a situation where they were testing the machines, make sure that they worked and everything like that, but then they didn't clear out the test balloting.
Yeah.
And so, you know, then they found out, oh, wait a minute, you know, we didn't clear out the test, but at least they, you know, they had printed out what the test results were, so they knew, okay, so yeah, this is the test results, so we need to back these off of the numbers, and we'll get there. But that's another thing, is to make sure the machines before, let's say you open up at 7 a.m., are all the machines at 0? You know, what if you came in and machine number 7 already had 1,000 ballots cast?
Yep.
You know, how did that happen? Yeah. You know, so, you know, you also got to go through, validate, verify. But the other thing is you got to trust the people doing the election. Here's why that's getting harder and harder to do across the country. Letitia James. I mean, these people that are elected but are just doing whatever they want to under the office. You know, or what's the other guy that...
Raffensperger in Georgia. You know, Secretary of State. I mean, you can name them, and most of them are blue states, you know, but they have certain outcomes they want, and might not necessarily be what the voter wants.
Yeah.
They'll fix it where it is.
They'll make it work.
So Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, you just trust that these people are just the salt of the earth. You can trust them, you know. Can you?
Yep.
I mean, they were elected. Were they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how could you know if, you know, they're like, we're going to get the outcome we want today, so you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
You know, and that's where poll observers come in. You know, and both parties should have access to that.
That's the reason you put cardboard up in the windows. You don't want anybody to see.
Exactly.
Well, and the other thing, I think it ought to be a national rule, every state should pass it, is we don't leave tonight until we're done. So, folks, bring your coffee, bring your energy drinks, bedroll, whatever, but we are not done. We're not going to go home and then come back at 3 a.m. or whenever everyone else is asleep and start over, and all of a sudden the election results are way
get all those
different.
ballots out from under that table and run them through there 2 or 3 or 4 times.
You know, there's
with the camera running up above.
Yeah, volunteers will be there. Everybody's going to be watching, but you would think in Connecticut, you know, they had video cameras there. Thank goodness, to catch this woman putting hundreds of ballots in, and it screwed up the entire election, and you know, we need to be watching that to see what penalties.
I was reading this morning, and I can't remember what state it was in, but this last election that we just finished, this lady got elected to, I think, the state senate. And now then the question is does she really live in the district that she was elected in? She claimed to, and then they had a reorganization, and it changed the district. And it put her in a different district, and she's still living in the original district that she lived in. And anyway, when they changed the boundaries, it flipped that. And so now then all of the neighbors around there are watching, and they're saying, well, the 2 cars, her husband's car and her car, is still there. You know, we see them out riding a bicycle and all of that. And so they're living in this district, but she got elected in that district. And so I can't remember where, it's back east somewhere. So anyway, now then, there's some ethics charges and one time, possibility of her not, not living in the district that she claims she lived in, so to make her eligible to run in that district. So I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy things going on out there, and I guess folks out here in the Midwest are way too honest to understand how things like this work. I don't know. It's just crazy, but we think about, I think, morals and ethics and those kind of things far more than whatever it takes to win. Out here, if you get beat, you get beat. And I just tell everybody that got beat, you're probably the luckiest guy I know.
Well, it's been a little while since we caught everybody up on what was happening in Marion, but the election, they just had their city elections too, and Ruth Herbel, whose house was raided, she lost her seat. She came in last in the city election, she said, what I ran on was truth, honesty, and transparency, describing herself as the only member who questioned anything on the council. Transparency is something that's lacking very, very much on the city council. Eric Meyer, this is reported at the Kansas City Star. Eric Meyer, editor of the Marion County Record, said the paper has received letters with concerns about transparency after newly elected officials partied on election day at a country club and allegedly did not let a reporter take pictures. The paper reported that Mayor-elect Michael Powers yelled at the reporter, a characterization Powers strongly disputes. We're just going to continue with more of the same, Meyer said, readers have told him, and I fear that that will happen. I still hold out some hope that some of the individuals elected are reasonable. So, they just had an election, and here they had this raid that I wonder how much they understand in Marion the national implications of what was happening with that. Yeah. I mean, maybe even international. This thing was in the London newspaper. It was, and websites. It's been in every major newspaper across not just the state, but across the country. And they're electing people who continue to do government in the dark and get rid of the person whose house was raided in this thing. I mean, it's just hard to understand where the people are in this. And I understand that publisher may be a little aggressive in a small town of 2,000 people, and likes to push the buttons and that kind of thing. But their headline, Marion voters reject Herbel. I mean, that's what happens. The mayor or the owner of the paper, he says that the Marion will continue to be governed by alpha dog rulers. He said, he told the Kansas City Star that he thinks Powers, the incoming mayor, could be good for the city and described him as bright. So we'll see what happens there. But what do you think about, she's 80 years old, so maybe that might have had something to do with it. But what do you think about, the woman who had her house raided by the police on this deal? She comes in last in the local election.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe age did have something to do with it. I don't have any idea. It's hard to tell what people were thinking.
We need to go back to our numbers. Let me find them here. But Marion City, 2,000 people, and she had 236 votes, and two other people had 400 votes.
That's 10%.
So it takes 400 votes or so to get elected in Marion, Kansas. Let's get back, find them here. I got to go, I'm looking at the wrong place. I got to go to look at those numbers that were sent. So let's see what it'd take in liberal to become a, come on, open that up there. Find the city. So in a city of 20,000 people, let's see, who was third? Matt Landry, 629 votes. So only 229 votes more than in liberal Kansas of 20,000, what it takes to get elected in Marion of 2,000. So basically what you could do is add a 0 to Marion's numbers if they were 20,000, and their guy would get 4,000 votes. Our guy is getting 629.
There you go.
What does that tell you about turnout?
Well,
Yeah.
not good. Not good.
And apparently, and there's another report on what happened in Marion and the Wichita Eagle, that I guess when the chief was doing that raid, that he was sending videos to the woman that the owner of the restaurant where the whole thing started in the first place. He's sending videos to her on that. I mean,
I think that might have been illegal, but I'm not sure.
Granted, he's not there anymore, but I'm telling you, the more, I mean, the more you learn about this thing, the worse you feel about it. I mean, it's something that these people feel empowered that they're running the show, and you'll get what we give you, and you'll do what we tell you. I just don't get, what they're reporting here is, and this is reported at the Eagle, newly discovered video shows former Marion Police Chief Gideon Cody calling restaurant owner Kerry Newell as he was driving between scenes where he and officers under his command were rifling through files and seizing computers and cell phones from the paper's owners. The video was accidentally recorded by Cody's own body camera.
Accidentally?
The ill-advised and probably illegal police action against the newspaper drew national attention, and many believe the stress of the situation contributed to the death of the paper's 98-year-old co-owner, Joanne Meyer. And the video appears to confirm rumors circulating in Marion for months that there was more to the relationship between Cody and Newell than a professional association. So, I guess he didn't know his body camera was recording, and he's on the phone telling her, "Oh, yeah, here's what we're doing. We're in between here and there, and da 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 da." I mean, what a ball of mess, and these are the people. So, is it any reason we question government sometimes?
Mike, I have a question in all this that I've never heard answered, and maybe it's been answered, but I haven't heard it. Did she ever get her liquor license for her restaurant? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
Well, that night they approved it. They approved it. I don't know if they rescinded it, but that night that the lady who just lost, it was a 4-1 vote. That's why she got raided, because she said, hey, she actually contacted the chief of police and said, hey, I don't know if we should be issuing this license because she's got a couple of DUIs I just recently been told about. And you can't have a liquor license when you're in that situation. Not only that, I want to know, that's a good question you're asking. I want to know, has she ever been arrested for driving without a license? Does she have a license yet?
There's a lot of questions unanswered here, I think.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's a deeper dive.
Deeper dive.
Part of the quotes that the chief was saying, the whole staff of the newspaper is out on the sidewalk and all the computer equipment's leaving the building. Cody said, yeah, surprising how that works, isn't it? And Newell, the lady, she said, wow, that was fast service. And Cody laughed, said, yeah, and I just hit Ruth's and Eric's, and she says, holy crap. He said, now I'm headed to Eric's house, but I've got to stop and something first. So, he's giving her play-by-play of what they're doing on a raid that's unprecedented in the United States of America. But boy, we're going to get them because we can. I mean, what's the difference between what was happening in Marion and what's happening in New York right now with Trump?
I don't know. That's just the way the world is right now. There's no common sense being used in any of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can just, use government against people.
Yep, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and it should not be that way. I'm so glad today that we got to hear from two of our top lawmakers in the state that, I think they want to put people first. And they want to end this, big government era here in Kansas. And I like what they said is, a governor can't sign any kind of bill unless Republicans say she can sign it, because they have to send it to her to sign.
Yeah, well, they are the majority up there by quite a bit.
And she acts like, she's this big thing of signing these bills. Well, she's just doing what the Republicans are sending her to get done. And, it's a great point. I like how Ty Masterson, President of the Senate, said, she signed this bill, you're welcome. Because they're the ones who gave it to her to say, sign it, So, well, it's going to be an interesting session. We'll end on this and then go to the weather, but what do you think the chances are that they can get that new tax structure through this time around? I mean, John Dole is the Senate representative up in Garden City, and he flopped, and after voting for it 3 times to get it done, when it came time to override the governor's veto, he flopped and kept him 1 vote short of getting it done.
I don't know. I would like to see it. I think it would be beneficial to everybody in the state that pays taxes. But, I don't know. There's guys like John. He's not the only one that claims to be a Republican, but sometimes you wonder, and you can pick those guys out. But I think, the people in Finney County maybe need to let him know their feelings a little bit more about whether they prefer lower taxes, or in the case that he voted for was a graduated scale. And, so just something to think about. But, on a vote like that, 1 vote certainly can make a difference. And if some of those guys jump ship, why, it's awful hard to, override.
It is. It takes they have enough.
Yeah.
As long as every Republican stays on board.
Yeah.
To override anything. It's kind of a strange situation. At the U.S. House, you have just barely enough, and you got to have everybody just to get anything through. In the Kansas Senate, you have barely enough to override a veto, and it's the same kind of situation you're in. She vetoed 36 bills, and he said they overrode 11 of them.
Yep.
And one of those was to make sure sports were just between boys and girls, and not boys and girls, or boys who think they're girls. It's biological boys, biological girls, that's it. And so that was a big one that they had to overcome. But B, give you the last word today before we go to the weather. Do you think that there's a chance that they can get this tax proposal through this year?
With the state of politics going on right now, I wouldn't bet on anything. I think I'm going to keep my money in my pocket and not place any bets there, because it's probably going to be a toss-up.
And you're our Vegas guy. You're the guy that goes to Vegas, and so I guess you know how to play the odds, and you're saying this is a toss, a flip, a coin.
I'm going to hold my money, yeah.
So, well, we don't want to send you into the weekend without giving you your squeaky clean car wash weather report. Today is going to be sunny with a high near 62, north wind 5 to 11 miles per hour, becoming east in the afternoon. Tonight clear with a low around 32. East-southeast wind around 8 miles per hour, becoming southwest after midnight. Saturday is going to be sunny with a high near 69. Breezy with a south wind 7 to 12 miles per hour, increasing to 16 to 21 miles per hour in the afternoon. Saturday night is going to be a 50% chance of rain after 7 p.m. Mostly cloudy with a low around 43. South-southeast wind 14 to 17 miles per hour. Sunday, a 50% chance of rain before 7 a.m. Mostly sunny with a high near 67. South-southwest wind 10 to 15 miles per hour, becoming north-northwest in the afternoon. Sunday night, isolated showers after 1 a.m., partly cloudy with a low around 36. Chance of precipitation is 20%. So it looks like a wet weekend.
Let's hope so.
Monday, just looking ahead at your highs next week, you're looking at Monday a high of 51, Tuesday 55, Wednesday 54, and Thanksgiving Day 49. So it's going to be a
Gonna be cool.
cool week. So that's your weather outlook, and that's the news and views you can use on the High Plains, Friday, November 17, 2023. We'll be back with you on Monday of Thanksgiving week. And we'll be back our regular time, 7:30 for that show. Until then, this is Earl with the Leader in Times with Jim Rice and B. Simon saying when you live in Liberal,
Or Marion, Kansas.
there's no place like home. Have a great